As it finishes then, Manchester City 1, Chelsea 0. Nedum, I just want to go back to you. As a player, I imagine you'd prefer to lose 3-0, but be beaten by a team who are just clearly better than you, playing better football, which we know Manchester City can, than today, where the door's open for you to walk through, but somehow you manage to slam it in your own face.
Well, to be honest, I'll start by saying no player likes to lose, whichever way it is. But I think when you look at the way that Chelsea played today, I don't even know if every player in that team would have sensed how big an opportunity that was. I think, for example, Chilwell is a very good player, but he still probably now doesn't know there were people right there in the box. Nico Jackson himself doesn't know the importance of taking some of those chances. I think at times it is an element of a young performance. When you play against some of these more experienced sides who've been winning things almost year in, year out, it's the little details that matter. They know, City, for example, they knew that this wasn't going to be one of those games where they had all the possession, create tons of chances, but they knew they had to take one. And as soon as they did, you know, they managed the game in a slightly different way. When Chelsea were on the back foot, City was stepping up. And yeah, from that Chelsea perspective, it's so disappointing. Like, I was here for the Carabao final against Liverpool, and they had so many chances that day to seal the deal, and then it progressively got worse. And today, I don't think some of those guys realised how big an opportunity that was. They played to however they wanted to play, stuck to the managers to a certain extent. But this is, as Craig said, as everyone's seen, this is the worst we've seen City play in a long time. A side that's been unbeaten since December. And I think for Chelsea to have the break that they had since playing on Monday, and to know that, you know, they've got the pace to stretch the game, to be aggressive, this for me is a bigger missed opportunity against City than, say, you know, that 90 minutes in regulation against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup. But he'll probably look at his team, see who's available. Can Haaland come back? Is John Stones going to be okay? Is Grealish okay? And they know now that the push is on between now and the end of the season. And if everyone's fully fit, I think the belief is there. And I don't know if the guys would agree with this, by the way, but the way City play today is how you'd expect the team to play. Say if you played on a Saturday and you watch a training session on a Monday, it's people who aren't going through the motions, they're trying, but everything's just a little bit off. And that's the version of City that Chelsea have played today. And I think for City to get a win off the back of playing like that, I think, if anything, I think it's a big boost for them.
Is that relatable, Kieran?
Yeah, I mean, I think Pep knew that his team were going to be tired today. It's completely normal. I think he should manage the rest now. The next few days are going to be really important for the squad in general, for this final push. You know, hopefully, for Arsenal's sake, that they
well, no one's talking about Arsenal. Well, you're bringing them into the equation. No one cares about that.
But I think, yeah, I think he definitely needs to get the rest right, because, you know, he's had a few players, you know, pull him up and say that they need a rest. This window is really important after the Champions League exit and getting through today. They play Thursday. I wouldn't be surprised, as Nedum said, if he gives them a couple of days off to switch off mentally and physically, and get ready for the final 6-7 games.
It was interesting, during the game you said this felt almost like a community shield, like almost pre-season, that sort of standard.
Yeah, and that was because, as Nedum said, almost every City player, possibly apart from the goalkeeper, every City player was just, maybe I say a little bit off, and some of them quite a lot off. And that just took the sting out of their performance, which is normally like fast and furious, and then teams are defending for their life and then maybe get the odd counter-attack. Everything was slow, and so that allowed Chelsea some areas of domination in the game, but that's kind of how it felt, and that's a perfect scenario, right, for Chelsea. It's a perfect scenario to get City in that sort of mental state and physical state, and this Chelsea side have just not been good enough.
See, this horrible run that they've accumulated at Wembley continues. Of course, we mentioned it at length, with them losing the Carabao Cup final, lost on penalties against Liverpool. Last when you go back to 2022, where they beat Palace in the FA Cup semi-final by 2-0. Since then, it's over 300 minutes at Wembley without finding the back of the net. Where do you stand on the penalty shout, on the handball?
I was okay with it, because I you know, don't think there's any doubt it glances the arm, but I think it was more of a glance than anything else.
Well, it still hits the arm. It doesn't matter if it's a glance or a brush or a hit.
Well, it's a bit. Well, it does, because it's a bit like making a challenge, and if a player gets the finest smidge.
Craig, watch his left arm.
No, I understand that, but it's a bit like making a challenge, and the player gets the merest smidge on the ball. It barely changes direction. That barely changes direction. Yeah, I mean, it's a 50-50 call.
He's trying to tuck it in, isn't he? Clearly, you can see that.
I mean, if it hits it direct in the arm and drops down, then
yeah,
of course it's a penalty. But we're going to argue the semantics here of, You know, there was a player in the game at. It was actually the Arsenal game at Brighton a week or two ago where there was a challenge in the box. The penalty was given for Jesus. There was some contact on the ball, but there wasn't enough contact. The ball barely changed trajectory, and I think that's the way, certainly I feel, that's the way the officials have looked at that one. I'm a little surprised though that one of the things I would say, I'm a little surprised that he didn't at least allow the referee Michael Oliver to go and make that determination. That's where I would have a problem.
Nedum, between now and the end of the season, what do you do if you're a Chelsea player?
That feels so harsh. We just try and play some games and win some games, Dan. What are you trying to get me in trouble for?
I'm not trying to get you in
Obviously,
trouble.
this is a huge opportunity, Blood.
You know, we've got to go back now. You've got 6 games remaining, and it just feels like this whole season has been another massive disappointment for Chelsea.
Well, that's from your perspective, and I think that's a reasonably fair one. But for these guys, they want to be out there, they want to be playing, they want to be winning games. And I think at times, how you can finish your season can sort of dictate how people perceive it. And I think for that fan base, the guys who will be turning up to watch them, the ones who will be watching them on TV, they want to see the team start to show some level of progress. Yes, they've messed up again at Wembley, but they can win the next game. I think they're playing Arsenal midweek. What a result that could be for them. I think further down the road, they've got other games of that nature, and they could finish higher, maybe. Just maybe they could even finish in Europe, as crazy as that may sound. So it's not all doom and gloom, even though these lows are getting so low. And I'll tell you what, Dan, one thing I've noticed, since I retired and started coming to Wembley, Chelsea always seem to be losing. So I think I might have to try and start watching other teams here, because at the minute, I'm a bit of a blue nightmare.
Nedum, we see the Manchester City players warming. How much did you hate that as a player? I just want to go home, wouldn't you?
Dan, hey, a guy like me, Dan, I was never on the bench. Never, ever, ever on the bench. I don't know what all this running lark is.
Yeah. Kieran, did you have to do that?
It's not nice.
Oh, it was a nightmare.
It
gets you the day off, though.
Oh, it means you get the day off the next day if you just do a couple of lengths to Wembley at the end and it's all right?
It's more than a couple.
No.
Just no.
He did everything there not to throw
yes.
1 or 2 individuals under the bus. What we needed was Ilkay Gundogan, just to say, oh, it was Nico Jackson.
Yes. Here's what he should have done.
We'd have been in the Champions League semi-final if it wasn't for Ronald Araujo making bad mistakes and getting himself. We'd have been at Wembley if Nico Jackson could just finish.
Yeah.
That's what he's thinking, but he's a manager.
What's it like when you've got a player who's had a nightmare in the dressing room afterwards?
I mean, the problem is it's not just one player, right? I mean, maybe today Nicholas Jackson could have finished a lot of his chances, but over the course of this season, there's been a lot of players that have been underperforming for Chelsea. So I think in this situation, it's a little bit different. I mean, I think for me, Pochettino, what he said at the beginning there, he said that they shouldn't have conceded when they did, and he's so right. I mean, on a day where City have not been at their best, don't concede. Right. Don't concede in the last 5 minutes. Take it to extra time. Just get it to extra time. If you realise that you're not clinical and you're not finishing your chances, shut up shop for the last 10 minutes. Take it to extra time. They're going to be obviously exhausted. They just played 120 minutes in Madrid. And see what you can do from there. And that's those signs of the naivety of Chelsea at the moment.
Players will never say to other players who have honestly missed chances. Nothing.
Right.
You know, again, it's the Nico Jackson story here. He worked hard. He ran the channels. He tried his best. It's not picking on the player for lack of any effort. He's just not a natural, confident finisher. And when you're in the dressing room, there is some element of empathy for that, because you're not trying. But when it gets to, and you know, you're not going around saying you should have scored and that really shouldn't and doesn't happen. Maybe it does the odd place, but I wouldn't think so. But where it can sort of fester is if it continues to happen is when senior players go to the manager and say, listen, we need to find a different way here.
Right.
We need to find a different way, because this is not happening and it's affecting everybody. And I kind of get that scenario at the moment. They have to get through to the summer, see where they are. Could be Europe, might not be. But they need to find a solution to these problems. Otherwise, Mr. Pochettino is going to be the next one with his head on the block. It's that simple.
So, Manchester City through to the final. Last year, they faced Manchester United in the final, didn't they? And that could very well happen again. They take on Coventry City tomorrow. That's our early game on ESPN+. Coverage starts at 10 a.m. Eastern. You'll be returning to Wembley for that game for us, Nedum. What are you expecting?
I'm expecting United to have a solid approach, but then to still have one or two issues against the Coventry side, who did very well in the round before against Wolves. I think they were deserved winners away at Molineux, and I think that says a lot about their style of play. And I think from a matchup standpoint, I think it will cause United issues, but United are the better side. They've got the element of attack, but they will give up opportunities because that's what United do. I think we've seen that, especially from when 2024 has kicked in, that the other sides will get opportunities, but will Coventry be able to take theirs? I'm not sure. But ultimately, I think all roads lead towards another Manchester derby final. And if it doesn't end up being that way, I'm really hopeful that Craig Burley will be on air to discuss it.